All right, welcome back to Leafs Late Night. Welcoming my good friend John, who is a bit of an expert on the video game industry, and we are going to be talking about the recent ending of the partnership between FIFA and EA also diving into NFTs and blockchain and what that looks like for the new NHL games moving forward and all sports games. But first off, I wanted to touch on this before the beginning of the show. I just wanted to give our deepest condolences out to the people and the families affected by the tragedy last night at Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival, where a mix of unsafe conditions and an out-of-control crowd left 8 people dead and more in critical condition. Just absolutely tragic series of events. I watched through a bunch of the videos on Twitter this morning, and it was just heartbreaking. A lot of anger towards how it was handled by Travis specifically, but just to be not angry and sympathetic right now, I just want to acknowledge how awful this is and show our support to the families affected and our condolences to the lives that were tragically lost last night.
Okay, and wait, doesn't Travis Scott have like a history of like having that behavior at his shows? Like,
he's been arrested for inciting crowd violence before, yes. So I would not be surprised if it happens again.
that was like part of his brand, right? Like on the Travis Scott like documentary on Netflix or whatever, like they talk about like that's part of what makes him Travis Scott, but like I don't know, that's not gonna hold up now after last night.
No, there were some deleted tweets where he was saying like the place is full but break the walls down or something, and people proceeded to bust past the police and break down the barriers at the front of the gates. So countless people got in for free that obviously aren't accounted for in tickets. Like it's sad. There needs to be, we have before. It's unfortunate that there aren't some like federal regulations around festivals. Like if you're holding an event for more than a certain amount of people that isn't like an established stadium or arena, that you don't have to submit your whole proposal and be approved. Like here's our safety guidelines. Like there has to be something with all these stages that have collapsed and all these situations like this over the last few years. Yeah, people were literally dancing on top of police cars, stopping them from getting to what was going on. So it was just awful. Anyway, so the first one I want to talk about is this. Yeah, lighter topic. Always hard to move out of those, but EA thinks NFT and blockchain games are the future. So just quick, NFT blockchain would be like how NBA Topps was doing their cards. So you would have your Hockey Ultimate or Soccer Ultimate cards, and I guess they would have a serial number that would then give it value, is the idea. I don't know. What do you think of this in gaming?
We definitely need to talk about, because I don't really know what it is. Like I know what an NFT is. Like I know, I've heard about these like NBA Top Shop or whatever, but like how would this work with like an annualized model, right? That's my biggest question, is like if they reset it every single year, how do you have an NFT, which is like by definition something that's permanent, right?
That's another thing I wanted to talk about is this going to change how the games are released? Like instead of seeing one every year, are we just going to see like a free to play but paying for season passes NHL or FIFA game? Or maybe not FIFA anymore, but Madden.
Yeah, well, I think like you have to take it with a grain of salt. First of all, like the fact that they're talking about NFTs, like it's kind of just to placate their shareholders. Like everyone is talking about NFTs right now. Like I'm sure that they're gonna get those questions on investor calls. So like whether they actually do it or not remains to be seen. But like they should be doing their due diligence and looking into NFTs, right? Because like think of what makes them the most money right now is microtransactions, and they kind of fall within the same family, right?
Yeah, and I feel like you're almost giving a part of the microtransaction profits over to people that are playing the game, and they disguise it as this play to earn, which I'm sorry, is that not gambling? Like, is that not what gambling is, as play to earn?
Yeah, and we can get into the gambling stuff, because that stuff's already happening, right? That's already a problem with FIFA and NHL and all of these brands. But I don't know. Like the NFT stuff, like I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. Like to your point, like if it's an annualized franchise, like they're not gonna give that up, right? Like that's how they make their money is by reselling the same product every year. And I'm sure like
Exactly.
NHL fans, you know, like I don't buy these games, like I don't know like these sport games very well, but I know that like I'd be much more willing to play them if I didn't have to buy the same thing every single year.
Exactly. I was going to say I'm skipping 22 more likely than not because I don't have a PS5 yet, and I'm not going to buy it for 4 because there's features that aren't in it. So I'm going to wait till I get a PS5, which means I'll be late. So I'll probably end up getting 23. So
So
skipping.
so 22 is like available on PS4 and PS5, but like it's really limited in features on PS4 is what you're saying?
Yeah, I haven't dove into all of it, but there are some things that like Battlefield and I mean all of their games. There's EA's kind of this is their new thing is they're going to add features that are possible with the engines and capabilities of the PS5 and the new Xbox, but they'll still release it for the profits on the old one and just dial those things back. So I'm not sure what the specific ones are for NHL, but like for Battlefield, they have double the players in a server, for example. So
Yeah,
it
they
changes
tend to
who you're
do that.
playing
Like
with.
even PS3 was getting iterations of like NHL up until I want to say like 2015 or something.
Yeah, 16 came out, but they called it like Legacy Edition on 360 and PS3, but they still released it.
I think FIFA was still releasing on PS2 until like 2013 or something.
That's insane.
It's some
So,
ridiculous.
to your point, like re-releasing these is what makes them the money. So I don't really understand why they'd want to hand over. So again, like if you don't play these games, there's an element to them outside of just the basic playing against somebody or managing a team, and it's this ultimate team that they've added. I think over the past, I want to say 6 years, where you get packs of cards. So they give you a free one, and you can play games against people online and do challenges to get the currency. But really, you're buying the currency if you're playing this thing. Like it's one of those bullshit. Like you can earn it in game, but it takes so long that it's worthless. So you buy these packs and they give you cards and you get shit players and then you sell those to get more coins to then buy more packs to get eventually better players and you build a team. So it kind of is like in before the NBA Top Shots thing. So if they're going to stick a serial number on these players, I get how they're going to do it. But like you said, if they're carrying it over year to year, I don't see how it would work.
It's almost like double egregious because like at first it was like it was already a pain in the ass that every year you had to buy a new NHL. Like I remember getting NHL '09 and like being like this is a great game, I love it, and then like before I knew it, it was like but I can't play online anymore. So like there's that element, but then it's also now that it's so microtransaction heavy that you're gonna lose whatever like sometimes hundreds of dollars that you sunk into this game when the next one releases.
Yeah, and that's how they're selling their deluxe editions now. Is just it comes with X amount of in-game currency, like GTA does, for buying packs, and that's. I don't play the game for the Ultimate Team stuff, so I feel like as somebody that is not part of that fan base, they're just not delivering anything for them anymore. They've shifted their focus strictly to this microtransaction in-game market. So it's kind of annoying as a fan of the games that they don't care about changing the mechanics that much over the last 2 decades.
Well, and in fact, like getting rid of features too, right? Like
Yeah. And then to bring them back and say it's new.
yeah, that's been a big controversy, right? Like they've just like stripped features away from it. Even think about the soundtrack, like
Yeah, there was no soundtrack. I forget which one it was, but there was no soundtrack, and it was just like a cinematic, like horns and strings soundtrack, and I was like, what? I found all of the music that I loved as a kid from these games, and you're just going to take the soundtrack away because you don't want to pay artists for it. They weren't even paying them, I don't think.
yeah, so it's crazy. Like they're cutting costs like crazy. They don't pay their developers that much, to be honest with you. Like it's not a lucrative space to be working for EA Sports. But then their like year over year growth is like insane. Like I took a quick look at their share or their stock price and like so back in 2015 when they started doing this microtransaction like the heavy implementation of it, they basically went up from like making 500 million off microtransactions to like now it's like 1.6 billion per year.
Oof. Wow.
At least for just for FIFA. So like if you look at FIFA, they've made like $20 billion like to date off of like this franchise. And most of it comes from microtransactions within the past like 4 to 5 years. So
It's
I can
absolutely
see how
wild.
it's like totally like transforming their business, right? Like they almost I can almost see a future where like they reduce the price of the game itself just to get people into the microtransactions, because that's really it's the whales that are selling everything, right?
Especially if you have to buy a certain cryptocurrency to get in to buy the NFTs within the game, because I think that's how it has to work. Is you'd have to switch your currency over. So if you're making people not only make a one-time purchase but also invest the money, you're not just gonna put in enough to make the one purchase. You're gonna put in like have a little bank of it in there. Like you're gonna put in $100 or something to use, presumably is what they want you to do. So especially if they're charging you for the transaction to buy those. And again, this is a rated E game. This is like all of this aside. Can we just talk about the fact that this is not in a casino? We're talking about an E for everyone available to anybody game. Like, is that not a problem? Like, when is the law going to have an effect on like what can be in games and how the rating changes?
Yeah, and that's definitely an industry wide problem. But like I don't know how bad EA is relative to other people, but like yeah, there's a huge ethical violation with some of this stuff. Like in order to get online, you need a credit card attached to the file now. There's like very little limitations to keep kids from being able to buy stuff. So you get all these stories of parents being like, I have, $2,000 on my credit card now. And it's like, it's not the child's fault. Like, we can say you need to be a better parent all you want, but at the end of the day, it's like, if we don't have the like tools and like security features in place, these kids are just going to keep buying loot boxes.
Exactly.
And not to mention, they're just addictive too, right? Like,
Of course, it's like you
I'm
buy a
afraid to
pack.
get into stuff like FIFA. Like, it's addictive. Like, I don't want to be looking for like the messy card and like spending thousands of dollars to try to do it.
We grew up doing that with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Enough. We don't need to do it with digital sports cards that we didn't even buy as kids.
So,
So,
is that like the
Oh.
pulse on NHL? Like, because again, I don't play these games, but like, is that what the community feels like? They're like, these microtransactions are bullshit. The annualization is bullshit. Like, the features are being reduced.
yeah, I mean, this one is the first time. I think Madden's been using the Frostbite engine for a couple of years now. This is the first time that EA's implemented it for NHL. Like, that's kind of crazy. It's their own native engine. How have they not been using it for their like one of their biggest sports games longer? Like, I don't understand.
And the engine's not even, it's not built for sports games either, FYI.
No, it's not, but they've been using it for Madden and it apparently works. So I don't know. Some of the things that they keep adding, like throwback to 1994 NHL, and like they put in all these features like new game modes and things. They're not listening to what people want, which is just like more realistic management, like NBA 2K has, where you're the actual features of like contracts and how the players interact and the contracts you can offer people and the trades you can offer. It's all more realistic. Like I don't know. It just 3v3 pond hockey in NHL 21 is not a feature that I was waiting for. Like they have no pulse on what people want, and not to mention, like you said, the people that make it don't make that much. The people that record the voices for these hate doing it. Like Jim Houston, who's been doing it for years, hates recording it because he has to say every person's name in like 10 different ways. And it takes him like a week and a half to do it. It's crazy.
Oh my god. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, from someone who's like a average fan of hockey, like I could play these games if they were like cheap enough, but I'm not gonna go out and buy them every year. Like, it almost feels like a wasted opportunity because like I would love to jump into NHL every now and then, but like I can't afford $90 a year on it. Like, that's just such a huge tax to pay.
Even if it's just like they should have a free to download game and then you pay for roster updates as the years change, because that's all that really people want is the new players that have been drafted and players to switch around to the right teams and all that. And it's a pain in the ass to do on your own. And they update the rosters up until like May, and then the next game gets announced, and even over the summer with the trade deadline they will stop updating the roster because they're like, oh, we're working on the next one.
Right. So yeah, and then now that there's these microtransactions in place, like it's almost too late to change anything. Like, the market should have responded to this bullshit like back in the early 2000s and saying like, we think it's unacceptable to have to like buy a new game every single year. But that's not what happened, right? And now they can kind of get away with a lot. they're making a shitload off of these games. That's like driving most of their business at this point. And I don't know. It's kind of sad to see because it impacts the rest of the industry, right? Like, other people are seeing how much, when they make 1.6 billion off FIFA Ultimate Team, like it's hard for everyone else to not respond in a similar way.
Yeah. And that's a good segue. FIFA announces after 30 years that they're ending their partnership with EA. So they're taking their name back, taking the trademark. EA files the trademark for EA Sports FC, which is presumably what their new soccer game is going to be called if they lose the name rights, because that's another story altogether. But big news for EA, and could mean big things for Madden and with the NFL and the NHL if they decide to go a similar route and keep things open-ended instead of a monopoly with EA.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I don't know. It's a big brand hit, but there's a couple things. Like, I don't think that this EA should be super worried about this. FIFA was asking for about 250 million per year by the sounds of it, so 1 billion every 4-year World Cup cycle. But from what I understand, like the partnership was really just like the name of it, right? Like EA still has licensed all the players and stuff.
Oh, they've got the license to the names of the teams and everything, all the clubs.
Yeah. So they don't get the FIFA name, but they still get the teams, and that would be the biggest blow, right? Because like as soon as you take away the teams and like the players, then all of a sudden FIFA Ultimate Team is done.
Dead. Yeah.
That's 1.6 billion in microtransactions they just lose.
Interesting. So they've only lost calling the game FIFA whatever. Okay.
Which like that's still a big deal, right? Like it carries like a lot of weight.
Oh, of course.
And I mean, like people just refer to it as FIFA. Like people are probably going to still call it FIFA for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like FIFA wanted a pretty large sum to keep the name, but at the same time, if I were FIFA, I'd be looking at EA and saying like, where's our slice of this pie? Like they're pulling this much money. Like I don't know. It seems more egregious on the part of EA to like really be hoarding all of this. They're not paying development costs. They're not paying for new features. They're not paying for like the FIFA licenses. So like, is this like how much of this is just pure profit?
It's funny. It reminds me of almost a completely unrelated thing, but when Hockey Night in Canada lost their theme song, it was one of those things where there's a contract that's been around for so long that when you go to renegotiate, it's like, okay, yeah, we negotiated this, in the 60s or 70s or whatever it was that, when the economy is where it is and numbers are completely different, and now we're renegotiating it, and I forget when it was that they lost it, like 2008 or 9 around there. But CBC didn't want to pay to keep the song, so they lost it to TSN. So it's like, yeah, they were paying 125 million a year already for this, but that deal was probably negotiated for like FIFA 04 or something.
And so in hindsight with that, like with that example, like do you think it's still a hit to them, like, or do you think people just adjust to that?
I mean, calling it EA Sports FC, sticking your name EA on the cover like that is tough because they're moving away from being like EA Sports NHL, and it's just like, oh, it's NHL 22, because they know that their name isn't very popular with people, getting voted worst company a couple times. So being called EA Sports FC when there's presumably going to be, like, what if there's FIFA 2K22 or 2K23?
Yeah, and that's the sad part is like there's such an opportunity to strike here if you're 2K or if you're another player. And actually, like, coincidentally, Konami, used to have Pro Evolution Soccer, which was like, it was a competitor. Like, it wasn't, quite as good as EA, but like it was on par, or close to being on par. And they went away for a while because like the game was just awful, and they actually just relaunched as a free-to-play last month, and it's unfortunate because the game is again just garbage. It's complete trash. Konami's like not interested in putting real money behind these things, but it would have been just the perfect time because like right as this news about FIFA ending the partnership with EA, if Konami just came in at the right time and struck, maybe they got the FIFA brand. Like all of a sudden, this could be like a completely different ball game.
Yeah, and I think it would be great for the sports gaming world because I think it's unfortunate that they seem to be licensing to one company at a time because it doesn't give for any competition. And it's something that's unique in the gaming world because there's no other game franchises that are so one to one compared. Like there's no two companies that make the same game that would be put up against each other. But, EA was putting out basketball games up against 2K for a long time until they stopped making basketball games.
Yeah, NBA Live games, they were like again, they were just awful. Like it's weird how each company has like their weird competitive advantages in certain sports, but like there's even an example of an NBA game that was completed, like printed, ready to be sold, and then it was pulled literally like a few days before launch because the quality was so bad.
Wow.
Like you can buy copies like in the wild on eBay and stuff. I think it was like NBA Live 12 or something,
That's crazy.
but
Because
it was just so bad.
you'd think that the success of NBA 2K has come from the failures of NBA Live, like a company that looked at it and said, "Okay, let's listen to what people want and make a proper basketball game." Now, in turn, that should send EA to go, "Okay, well, how do we fix NBA Live to compete?" But instead, they just folded it, which is kind of telling of EA's business strategy. Is just instead of putting money in and investing in research, they're just going to fold and move on to the next thing.
And you know what? I bet their investors are just like foaming at the mouth though because they're like, if you did this with FIFA, why are you not doing this with NBA? Like, why are you not doing this with MLB? Like all of these different areas. But it's weird. Like you'd think that, if you can make one sports game, you can make another. But I feel like it's so dependent on like having like a solid engine, like having like a good like gameplay mechanic like locked down. And if you can't get that fundamental thing, which I guess is harder than it seems, like then you're just gonna get eaten alive by the competition.
Well, I think something that's gotten better. I mean, I have NHL 21. I haven't got 22, but one thing that's gotten better is the game mechanics and how they actually feel and the realism of it. The thing that I think they need more help in is the actual hockey back end of the game, like the knowledge and the management and all that, as opposed to the actual mechanics, which is funny because that was the problem for the last 20 years, was it just didn't feel like you're playing a natural hockey game. And I feel like with the new consoles we're getting closer to that, but like the trades that you can offer and the contracts you get offered, and like I was a rookie, for example, in NHL 21. I scored, like I had it on a pretty low difficulty, scored like 500 goals, and I got offered like a league minimum contract for a rookie. Like it doesn't make sense. So there's just certain aspects of it, and I guess it's hard to, because then it kind of gets into algorithms of like, what you scored versus other players in the league's contracts, comparables. But I think that's something that if they want to be serious about it, fantasy and sports betting are the big things now in sports world. You got to get really into the numbers and the deep dives.
Oh my god, are we gonna get sports betting within EA?
Dude, probably. I wouldn't doubt it. Like, they're starting to apply for it. I forget which arenas they were, but probably Vegas, to have the like live sports books in the arena, so you can be in the arena watching the game and be betting on things live.
Interesting.
So
I don't know.
only a
I
matter of
don't know
time.
how that makes me feel.
Yeah, I mean, single game sports betting is now legal in Canada. Our friend Mitch, very involved in that. Shout out.
I just, yeah, I don't know. I wonder about the ethics of it again. Like, EA's shown like time and time again, like they don't care about like how addictive, these things are. They don't care about the mental health or the well-being of their people. Actually, like a lot of FIFA pros have like spoken out and just said like these systems are like dangerous. Like they're bad for kids. Like it creates a lot of like, there's like a pay-to-win atmosphere around it. Like there's this whole like hidden economy behind it that's just like gross.
Yeah, and I mean, look, all the videos you see of people smashing their TVs with something or all when they're playing FIFA, there's something to that. Like, it's not healthy for people. There's a very ugly culture around that game too. So, I mean, we've gotten a little off. I think that there is an opportunity for somebody else to step in and really like swoop out the whole soccer or football world from EA there. I don't think it's a huge hit to lose the name FIFA, but I think somebody else could snatch it and that would steal everything away. Like currently, I'd say they're not in danger, but if like FIFA 2K23 happens, they're done.
Yeah, like it's not a big deal in some ways, but in other ways, it's a huge deal. Like when you're dealing with a property that's that massive, like you must think they're afraid to make any change whatsoever, like any brand shift, any marketing changes. Like they must be so terrified because they know that they have something good, something that's working year over year, and they really don't have to do much. You kind of just sit back and let it just generate revenue. But I could see them being very scared about this because like who knows, like maybe losing like that little bit of like ubiquitousness with FIFA like is just enough to lose, even if you lose like 10% of your customers, like that's massive for FIFA.
That's massive. And I think the biggest shift for EA has been that sports games profited the same way that like Call of Duty games do by releasing every year. That's something that other video games can't do because it almost wouldn't make sense. But sports games are able to do that. Now we're into an era where long-term investment into the games you play is bigger, and that's where people are making their money on these microtransactions. Like look at Rocket League. It's been around forever. And you don't see another Rocket League every year. They just have to put out season passes and cosmetics and things. So now you have EA getting to a point where they're like, how do we balance our profit model of releasing something every year with getting people to invest in a game long term and want to continue buying things to add to it? So I don't know how they're going to figure that out.
Yeah, because I'm sure they're looking at games like Rocket League and like being very, nervous about some of these guys because like you keep your user base, right? Like they don't have to reset year over year, but every time EA puts out another game, charges $90, they're taking a huge risk in assuming that people are going to pick this game up again. But like I don't know, if we went into a recession or something, like think about what you would cut even from like your leisurely spending habits. Like are you going to buy that same rehashed game again? Like
it's an easy one to cut, but maybe I'll buy a new skin in Apex, like that's the thing. I might not drop money on a full game again, but something that I've had that I would invest in. So I don't know how they find that balance. It's hard when players change every year and teams change every year and
yeah. It's shaky, and like they're okay at least because they know that they can hit these dates every year, because the games are so easy and just rehashing the same stuff. But some of these other annualized franchises, like in the next 5 years, you're going to see a Call of Duty game that doesn't meet the deadline, which is going to be like catastrophic for Activision. But because like development times are getting increasingly like longer and longer, Call of Duty Vanguard's like not a complete game. Like that game is not done, dude, by any means.
No, I hear you. We're going to see more of that. It takes longer to build things when you're asking for more and giving people a bigger space to work with and more resources and a more powerful console. Like, it's going to take more than 8 months to make a new game. Well, we're also dealing with all the troubleshooting for the one that's already out. Like, you're dividing your development team in half already. It's unsustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. Something has to give. And you know what? I'm ready for that disruption because like I don't think the games industry is going in the right direction with being so microtransaction heavy. Like on the one hand, like game development costs are like the highest they've ever been. $90 is too cheap for a game these days relative to the cost that it takes to build them. But microtransactions isn't the answer. Like it's really not, at least in the current way that we like, addictively like get people into them.
Yeah, the random loot boxes are something that really needs to be controlled. It's the pulling of packs of athletes or a box of skins for your cars or whatever it is. That's where it's just getting out of hand. Like when you don't know what you're getting and you just pay for a box. That's insane.
And NHL still does that, right? Like it's still full on loot boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a loot box. You're buying a pack of cards.
Okay. Because a lot of games are moving away from that, moving to battle passes and things that like are a little bit more sustainable, a little bit more like ethical, because it's like a tangible thing that you keep, and you like there's some gameplay to it, and I don't know, these packs are just like it's just riding off people's like highs of trying to get a good card.
Of course it is. It's taking, you know, 100 years of sports cards and turning it into just a digital marketplace alongside an already successful sports game. Like, you have the people there already. It's just your card's already connected. We put it on the main screen. Oh, you get a free pack today. It's your monthly free pack. Oh, it's shit cards. Do you want some good ones? Here's, a deal on coins if you want to buy some today. It's insane.
And yeah, I think part of it too is there's definitely a nostalgia element. There's an element of like, people grow up with like their, soccer heroes or their football heroes or whatever, and a lot of it's just trying to like relive that. So there's like this weird, there's a psychological element to it, and they do that with a lot of their other games. Like another example, like tangential to that, is and you should look this up. It's pretty crazy, but there's a Simpsons mobile game that basically it's all about like it's one of those like click games where you're just like building
Collecting
resources,
stuff,
like getting currency. It's nothing. There's nothingness to it. It's just garbage food. But the whole point is like you're trying to rebuild Springfield, and the reason for that is it's that psychological trigger of like you're trying to rebuild it because that's what it's like in your head, and when it's not, when it's like this incomplete Springfield, like it bothers you mentally, right? Because you're used to like the show that has like this is where Krusty Burger is, this is where Springfield Elementary is. So a little bit of a tangent, but like I think there's an element of that too, where it's not just about like wanting to build the perfect team. A lot of it too is like, I like to me football is Messi, so like I need to have Messi on my team, but unfortunately I have to pay to get that.
Well, yeah, and I'd feel the same if I was like, well, I have this, you're putting together random players you get from packs, right? So if I had a couple random old players that I don't know, I'd be like, well, I'm going to keep buying packs until, there's people that I want on my team. Or like if I get Matt Sundin or, Mitch Marner or somebody, like they throw these legend people in, like, oh, you can get Gretzky, or you can get, you can put Gretzky on a line with McDavid if you want. It's exactly what you're saying. They just pull at nostalgia heartstrings. And
do they have those legacy players right now? Like, can you get like Matt Sundin?
Yeah, in Hockey Ultimate Team you can get legacy people.
Yeah, that's dangerous. And again, I don't know how much these NHL packs are making, but like I feel like there's room for them to grow, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse until people in the community stand up and say like this, enough's enough.
Well, I think it was at E3 that EA announced that it was a couple of years ago that they were moving the FIFA Ultimate Team onto like its own mobile app separate from the FIFA game. Like that's scary. Like they're just saying, whatever, this is its own thing. We're just gonna, you can do it on your phone now. Just give us money.
Yeah. At what point? And that plays into the NFT stuff. Like, at what point is it like not even about the gameplay anymore? At what point is it just like, I just need to select this?
You're just selling cards. Your upper deck. Like
virtual hockey
cards.
Just
buy upper deck. Honestly, if that's the route they want to go. Are you that's actually the overarching question of all this. Is EA making sports games, or are they making a sports fan marketplace?
Wow. No, that's a good point, because again, if the game is static, like if it's not improving at all, like it really is just just a platform by which to like sell these things.
Yeah, you're just going into a store. Like when I open NHL 21, it's a bunch of these tiles, like windows or whatever, and the bottom one is a massive ad for the next one, like NHL 22. Pre-order your deluxe edition for $130 with all your extra points, and you go over to the ad. You can scroll over to other ads for deals on coins, and get these people in Hockey Ultimate this month. Before time runs out, get them. It's like this is on the main page of like the game. Like I feel like I opened an app, like an NHL app or something. It's insane.
Yeah, it's manipulative, and it's like it's where the world's going. Like I don't know, we're not getting enjoyment out of this. It's just a way to like consume and like take our money. But
yeah, it's all got to be more than just a game. It can't just be a game. It's got to be a whole thing. You got to be able to spend 6 hours a day and investing your money into it. And it's insane the market share that everything thinks they need. So
Well, good for EA. You know, like
yep.
their stock's about the same as Apple right now, and they're selling fake cards and fucking up every other franchise, i.e., Mass Effect, Dead Space. We'll see how Battlefield turns out. That's another game I don't think that's done.
Apex, they released an update that wasn't done, so and they rolled it back, and then it didn't roll back properly. And yeah, EA's had a really financially good but publicly bad year.
Yep, and yeah. So I mean, they can enjoy all the success that they want, but at the end of the day, like, you know, as a gamer, like I don't have any respect for them, and you know, I can see like the areas that they're trying to improve in, but I don't buy it. And you know what? I'm happy that they lost the Star Wars license because I really think that should be in better hands.
100% agree. Well, thanks, John, so much for coming on and talk about this. I know you're not the hockey fan. I know this isn't what we usually cover, but I mean, it's NHL games, and it's all one and the same. So
Yeah, always down to talk shit about EA, so bring me on. we can come back to discuss it again.
Appreciate it. Well, I'm sure there'll be more EA Sports news throughout the year, or EA in general.
EA Sports. It's in the
game. All right, so once again, this is Leafs Late Night. I'm Roscoe. This has been John Shehan, and we are up on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Audible, on Amazon Podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Catch you next time.